What's going on, everyone? This is Baseball Card Junkies TV, East Coast edition. We thank Eric and Nate for allowing us to guest host this. I'm MikeO, joined by
Ray from Philly
and Ed, WeskerGriff.
And today we're going to focus on grading cards, having your cards graded, and some reasons why you might want to have your cards graded. So there's a lot of different companies out there, and there's different ways to go about it, and there's different reasons to collect graded cards. SGC and Beckett are two big companies. PSA is another big company. The three of us all collect PSA. Speaking for these guys, that's what we would recommend. Ed, what are some reasons why you may want to consider getting your cards graded?
One of the reasons I really like PSA over BGS specifically is I just like the look of the slab a lot better. I feel it's more visually eye-appealing. But I also like PSA a little bit more than BGS because I feel PSA adds more value to the card. Like, take, for example, this Nolan Arenado, a card that's been really just going through the roof recently. I picked one up at a show recently for 20 bucks, but right now it's going for 40 as a Gem Mint 10. But you could probably pick up this card raw off COMC or maybe even eBay for, I don't know the price offhand, but probably I would say it's for half of that. But that's just the value that PSA adds, because Gem Mint 10s, especially for modern cards, are very desirable, and not every card that comes out of the pack is going to be Gem Mint. It's not easy to get a Gem Mint 10. There could be a little bit of flaw, but that's just why I personally like PSA. They look nice, they're visually appealing, and they add a ton of value. And another reason that people really like PSA is for the registries, and I know Ray does a lot with the registries, so Ray, you can talk about that a little bit more.
The registries are really a lot of fun to do, but they can be very addicting. There's a lot of different set registries, and it gets you interested in players that you never thought you would get interested in doing, besides just the big name players of Ruth and Gehrig and DiMaggio and Mantle. There's certain fun registries out there that you can do, like the Post-War Rookie Hall of Fame set registry, the 50 Greatest Sluggers by Sporting News. If you look at that set, for example, on 50 Greatest Sluggers, there's guys in there like Boog Powell and George Foster that you never would really think that, why would I get that? But for those kinds of sets, it just makes it fun. That's not an investment type of a set, but it's definitely a for fun set. And there's sets out there you want to do, say, your birth year. I'm born in '67, and you know, you might want to go a different year than my year, but if you go in your birth year, just want to get the Hall of Fame players for that year, that's a fun thing to do as well. And I wanted to touch on one more thing when it comes to grading. You know, there's what I've noticed, there's two types of grading out there. There's what we call a collector's grade and an investment grade. And a collector's grade, how I base it on basically, is whatever decade that card is in. For example, we have a 54 Topps Ed and Johnny O'Brien card here that I'll step in a little closer and give you guys a closer look. So a card from the 50s, a collector's grade for the 50s would be a 5, and an investor grade is a 7. And from the 60s, same thing. Or it's from the 60s, a collector's grade now would be a 6. Investment grade is now 7. A 70s and a collector's grade is a 7. And now the investment grade goes up a 1 to an 8. An 80s would be an 8 and then a 9. And the difference between a collector's grade and an investment grade is that a collector's grade will maintain its value, that you won't really lose money on it, or you shouldn't. And an investment grade, think about it in stocks, will go this way more. A collector's grade will stay a little bit more even keel, but by the end you shouldn't lose money. There are certain players that you can get below a collector's grade. DiMaggio, Ruth, Gehrig, and Mickey Mantle, you can get 2s and 1s on those certain players, and it doesn't matter. They're going to go up in value anyway because of their name, because of their iconic status in the history and the lore of baseball. But the rest of the players, you know, if you want to get something that you don't want to throw money away, you want to get the collector's grade, the investment grade is going to be definitely more of an investment, but you're going to spend more money on the investment grade. So keep in mind on that, and I'll give you a closer look on this 50s card just to give you an example. Sorry, Ed, for blocking you out there.
Blocked me out, too. Just try focusing.
And it's still trying to focus. Hopefully, you can get it. There you go. 54 Topps Ed and Johnny O'Brien. that's a card that it's in the 50s. So basically, that would be you get a 5 for a collector's grade. In an investment, you get a 7.
Yeah.
So.
And one of the things I preach with the hobby as much as I can is, listen, it's a hobby and it should be fun.
Right.
You have to have fun. But at the same time, and we're talking about investments here, when you put that much time, effort, energy into collecting something and you spend money on it, you don't want to collect stuff that no one has interest in that holds no value. You know, it's easy to collect paper clips. We can all collect paper clips. They're worth nothing.
Yeah, no.
It's kind of a waste of time and energy.
Right, and you never know if a time comes later on in your life where you do have to sell them. Getting cards that are graded compared to cards that are raw will be a lot easier for you to sell the card, because people don't know if the cards that you have that are raw are really real. This guarantees, or should guarantee, that it's a real and authentic card, and you know what the value of the card is, and it'd be a lot easier for you down the road if in fact you did have to sell it.
Yeah, and the grade can't be disputed either.
Right.
By a potential buyer or seller.
Yeah, if you're going to sell the cards, you can set, you know, this is what it is. It's been authenticated. Yeah. They've checked to make sure it hasn't been altered. And you have the condition. I mean, there's a lot of people that pick something, oh, this is mint, and you look at it, it's not really mint. Yeah. So that's one of the things. But back to, besides the investment, the fun part of the hobby, Ray's doing the set registries, and he's having a lot of fun putting together those sets. Ed's trying to go through players he likes or players that he believes, that he thinks, you know, have a chance to be really good or are really good, and he has fun going through with the challenge of getting a 10, getting it back, the thrill of, you know, trying to do that. And I do the same when I do grading. I'm sitting there, I'm with modern cards, I want a 10. I don't, and it depends, you know, if I have something from the 50s, 60s, it's been around for 50 years, your expectations are certainly not going to be for a 10. But there's a real challenge to getting high-graded cards. It doesn't just happen. Even with brand new stuff, a lot of people say, oh, they should all be 10s. Well, they should be, but it's manufacturing, it's human error, it's machine issues, it's things being dropped.
Surface scratches.
There's so many issues that can happen with the card. I've had a lot of success grading new cards, and a lot of people say, oh, they're all 10s. Well, there's a lot of effort to go through and evaluate the cards and make sure they're good. It doesn't, if you open a box of cards and just send them all in the mail, well, you're probably going to be really disappointed and get a really big bill in the mail, too.
Well, Ed's right. When Ed said it's not easy getting a 10, it's not easy getting a 10. It's, if you get a card that's a 10, consider that to be a really good thing, because they don't just throw 10s out. They're very strict, PSA, and that's what kind of separates them from other grading card companies. You can send something in that you look at and you know you're guaranteed, man, that's going to be a 10, and it came back. It happened to me on one of my cards. I had a 91 Bowman. Now, this is a modern card, and it looked at it, and it came back a 5. Jeez. Now, for me to see it as a 5, you have to see real visible, you know, defects on the card. That's how strict PSA is. So if you anytime you get a 10, consider that a very good thing, and it's almost like a privilege and an honor to get a 10.
And the reason we talked about PSA a little bit, or I talked about it, you definitely, if you're going to spend money on grading, you want to go with a legitimate company. I believe PSA is the best because they're well recognized. They have the set registries, which does add value. They're strict, like they said. They have great holders. Beckett's very popular as well, especially among modern cards. Part of that, to be honest with you, is because dealers like getting it done because they're easier, and it's much easier to get a 9.5 gem mint, so that helps them move the card better. So be leery of that with Beckett, and if you love Beckett holders, that's fine too. SGC is extremely popular. That's more so considered
pre-war cards.
Yeah, for vintage stuff and pre-war. So those are the 3 companies. When you see other stuff like GMA, and I can't even remember half the names.
GAI.
Honestly,
you don't want to do with that.
Just because you see a, you know, whoever it might be, a 10, take it with a grain of salt, just as if you're buying a raw card. Believe me, they pump 10s out on those things all the time. You break that out and get it done by a legitimate company, it will come down much lower in most cases. So, you know, there's a lot of ways to go about getting your cards graded. Through their website, it's fairly expensive. You can join the PSA Collectors Club, and you'll get 15 free submissions with that. There's a bunch of other ways you can do it. You can follow their specials. They're not always great unless you're looking to get some real vintage stuff done. It's usually like pre-56 or something. But there's various ways. There's group submissions, which are a great way to do it. You can get in with buddies. You can do bulk submissions. So there's a lot of cases. If you're wondering why Ed is a little distracted, we have a guest star that will.
He wants to be in on the
quick.
video, so we might as well put him in. Everybody knows Diogi. My son Ray holds him all the time.
Yeah, so he had to find his way into the national
He's like
show.
jumping on my lap.
But so group submissions are a possible way to go. You can get into submissions with friends. A lot of local card shops also do group submissions. So you can submit your own cards, which is fun. But Ray touched on a little bit about buying cards. And buying cards already in the holder is another way to go because you get what you want. You get the grade you want. You might have to pay for it, but you get the grade you want. And also with vintage stuff, which is something you have to be careful with. You know this way they're not trimmed, recolored, and various other issues. In some cases, you know, they could be counterfeit.
Right. And you never know what you're going to get when you have a raw card and you send it in. Don't, you know, I always, if you're going to do raw cards, I always expect whatever you think it's going to be, expect one lower. So if you think this card's going to be an 8, try to anticipate a 7. So this way when it comes back lower, it's not that big of a disappointment.
Great. But, you know, grading cards is just one aspect of the hobby. There's so many aspects. You have your parallels, you have your rookie collectors, you have your autograph collectors.
Team collectors.
Yeah, all different kinds of
people
sets.
Busting wax. There's so many things you can do with the hobby. So we just wanted to address grading and why that is something that you might want to consider doing. So with that being said, any final thoughts, Ed?
No, it's just going back to the vintage that you were talking about. As someone who doesn't really buy too much vintage but appreciates vintage,
Right.
I really like the fact when it's graded because, like you said, I know it's not trimmed or it's not recolored in. Because too many times here on YouTube or on the Facebook groups, you see horror stories of guys buying cards. They send it in to get graded because it looks great, and then they find out it was trimmed and it doesn't get graded because
That's
of
really disappointing.
So that always has scared me away from picking up like vintage raw. I much rather pick it up graded.
Absolutely.
But you're going to be paying a premium probably for some of the grades because the higher the grade for vintage, obviously the more value it is.
And the
the
good thing about vintage is these players' careers are done. They're over with.
Yeah.
They're not getting a career-ending injury or anything
No,
like that.
that's a very good point. You know what? Yeah.
You know, you're going to spend a lot of money, but you have to remember these aren't just baseball cards. They're not just collectibles. They're antiques.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's essentially what they are. They've been around, you know, most of them are 50, 60, 70 years old.
They're part of baseball history.
They're part of baseball history. They're part of Americana. So,
Mm-hmm.
You know, vintage is definitely something that you spend money on. It's not like you can't recoup that money at some point. So, Ray, any final thoughts?
No, just that, like you said, on vintage, you know what you're getting with the player whose career is over. He's already in the Hall of Fame, or he might not be in the Hall of Fame. With the current player, just be leery with the guys like, I mean, I love Arenado and I love Corey Seager and all that, but, you know, be very leery and try and jumping on the hot players of today, like the Judges and the Bellingers, because, like, you know, perfect example could be like you know, when McGuire was really hot in the late 80s and his card was a couple $100 and then it dropped. So be very leery about current players. That's why I stick mainly with vintage players, because their career is already done. And you know what you're getting.
And that's not to say that you can't, because some people like prospecting, so you can pick and choose here and there, but you just want to be smart about it.
And not go crazy.
You see some people who buy some of these modern, actually a good example is some of these guys who haven't actually reached the majors yet, and they have these parallels out that are like graded 10 that are like $5,000. I'm like,
Vladimir Guerrero Jr.
Yeah.
And he may very well, you know, 40 years from now, we might look back on this video and go, oh, we were idiots. Vladimir Guerrero should have been buying them up, but you never know.
That's the fun too about
I've gone crazy with Kinnery recently, Scott Kinnery.
But that's the fun part about the hobby too, is the speculative buying. That's how it was back in the 80s. I bought all current players at that time. I was staying away. I don't want a vintage because their careers are done. They've already peaked. No, the current players, you don't know what you're getting, and the vintage, their careers are done. They continue to go up because as the older the card gets, the more scarce it becomes. And there you have it.
Things end up in collections, never to be seen again. It's amazing. We could go on for another 3 hours, but we're going to cut it off there.
Yep.
Ray from Philly, Ed WeskerGriff, MikeO. We appreciate you watching this episode of Baseball Card Junkies TV. Hope to see you soon.
Peace out.